How do you balance policy and autonomy to maximize company growth? VP of People at Gabb, Parker Hansen shares his perspective.
Hey there, I'm Krista Vance, entrepreneur and operations leader.
And I'm Matt Vance, award-winning author and social innovation researcher. We're your hosts of the Culture Profit Podcast.
Your place for purposeful company culture strategy.
Learn from HR pros, executives, and thought leaders how to prioritize profits by prioritizing people.
This episode is sponsored by Mobrium, the best friend of forward-thinking HR leaders, helping you strengthen your employer reputation as a reflection of your real culture.
Learn more at mobrium.com. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We've got a super fun episode. We're welcoming Parker Hansen here from Gabb. If you've ever driven down I-15 in Utah, you've for sure seen the billboards all about safe tech and software, great smartphones and wearable tech for kids and teens. It's been an explosion of growth that we've seen from Gabb over the years. So we're super excited to hear about the culture behind the technology. Thanks for joining us today, Parker.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. How's it going, y'all?
Good. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, it's funny. We used to have, it was 52 billboards from St. George up to Logan, depending on what direction you were going. And so now that there's not as many anymore, my kids are like, where are all the billboards?
Do they point at them and Dad, you work there?
Oh yeah. So every time we go past them. But it's fun. Yeah. It used to be when people would find out I worked together, you guys have all the billboards. I'm like, yeah, the billboards, but they didn't know what we did. And now it's oh, Gabb, the smartwatches and smartphones for kids. I'm like, yes, the billboards did their thing, but
it led you to the right place.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm going to share a little bit about Parker. So Parker comes to Utah from Fresno, California, which he claims has the most diverse food on the planet for a city of its size.
Mm-hmm.
That means I need to go check that out.
Mm-hmm.
Parker started his HR career in 2015 and has enjoyed growing in that space for the last 10 years. In another professional life, he worked in athletics administration, handling everything operations and the love of sports, especially ones that his kids play. This keeps him working to ensure his knees will hold out to play basketball with them.
I feel you there, Parker.
When they're older. Yeah, he has a story about that. He loves finding the intersection of people and process and how they can be mutually beneficial. Very cool. But yeah, Matt had a knee surgery from a basketball injury just last year. So 2020.
You got to keep those knees.
Yes, keep them strong. So tell us a little bit about Gabb and the first day employee intros that you were telling us about, and a little bit about you.
Yeah, so Gabb's first day is a lot of fun. You show up, here at the office on the corporate side, or if you're working remote for our customer support, and you'll be introduced to some members of your team as well as the people team. And we always ask everyone to introduce themselves, and it's some basics. Where you're from, what are you going to be doing here at Gabb? What do you love about your job? And then an interesting thing about yourself. So I'll just do that really quick. So as mentioned, Parker Hansen, I'm from Fresno, California, which is I get it. No one likes Fresno too much, but I love it. So I'm the big proponent of it. Great food, great people. I work in the people operations department. It could be HR, but when I started at Gabb, I was the 5th or 6th person hired. And so I did the recruiting, the payroll, the benefits, the insurance, the IT, facilities, and all the in-betweens for everything.
And Jack of all trades.
Yeah, all the stuff. And that was kind of the deal, though, when I made with our CFO. He's like, hey, I need someone who can do everything. And I said, I'll try. I'm okay at most, but we'll try to do everything. And we've slowly grown, I guess not super slowly. We've grown pretty quick after that. And yeah, interesting thing about myself. So when I was playing basketball, I caught an elbow during a basketball game, and it didn't knock out, but it sliced in half 3 of my front teeth. And they kept trying to put caps on them, just like you would for a regular cap. And they kept falling out at the most inopportune times. For example, when you're eating Cheerios for breakfast one morning and you happen to chew on a cap, or the night of Sadie Hawkins' dance senior year, or some other times you'd wish you had a tooth. So yeah, now they're all permanently affixed to me, and that's an interesting thing about Parker, and really what we make people do at their first day at Gabb. So it's just a way for us to get to kind of know people. People are like, oh, I had this thing happen to my face, or I also like to rock climb, and kind of bonds people in a fun way.
An elbow that knocks out part of your teeth. I can't even imagine. That must have been so painful.
Yeah, it was jarring, literally jarring.
That's awful.
That is pretty bad, man. And I love that first day flow. That's really fun. I like that.
It's a good time.
And props to you for doing so much when you started at Gabb, and to see where they've come. I mean, I know you played an integral role in that, and so props to you. That's amazing.
Yeah. So tell us more about what has growth looked like in the past 5 years. When you started, you were in the first 5 or 6 employees doing everything. Where is it now?
Yeah. So let's see. When I started, it was September of 2020. We had, like I said, 5 people that worked for Gabb. And it was quite exciting. I showed up to my first day to what I thought was the Gabb office. It was actually the marketing agency that ran marketing for Gabb's office. And we had like 5 or 6 desks in that office. So you didn't know who worked for EKR was the name of that agency, or Gabb when you first started, which was an exciting time. And we quickly started to sell our first product, which was our lockdown phone. And it was this huge success. We were selling all over the place, mostly in Utah, for sure, but we started growing out of state very quickly. And as we started to grow, we found out very fast that we were not ready to support the amount of customers that we were bringing on. So we had to go out and find customer support, which is what we decided to do, outsource at first. Fulfillment, all outsourced. Marketing agencies, SEO agencies, everything was like, hey, we don't have the people right now, but people are ready for what we have, and we're not going to, stop the floodgates. So let's get out there and find some people who can help us that are already ready, and then we'll start to bring that in-house over the next little bit. The next little bit meant next year. We went and found our own office, which was wonderful. Really made it our own, and we started to hire people in essential functions, from some of the basics of our product people to accounting and software and creative, and all those first people. I can gladly say are actually still here. So our first VP of engineering, our first VP of growth, our first VP of creative, accounting, all still at Gabb, and have grown in their own careers as well. And yeah, then we started to bring them in-house. So how does that look like? What do we need to do to make sure we have a successful customer support team? Who's going to run that, and how is that going to be effective? And how do we give people the right structure so they can grow versus autonomy to do what they want to do? And it's been fun. We have just about 300 employees right now. We have the group here in Lehigh, which we would call our corporate employees. And then there's also a large amount of customer support employees who work from home or remote. And then we also have a small office in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where our music streaming service is based out of. We have this software called Gabb Music. We're super excited about it. It can currently be found on a Gabb device. We're working on making that more available to other people. And yeah, exploded.
So you started with so many different tasks. Have you kind of specialized now, and you have other people covering those tasks that you used to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started, like I said, every day was trying to figure out how we were going to do all these fun things. And now I'm more towards the side of the progression of the company when it comes to business and people. And we have people that do our, payroll and benefits, insurance, IT, facilities. We've got our own customer support head and a customer support team, logistics team. Everything in between has now been, diversified from my own job to someone else's.
Yeah, that's great. And so are you more involved in making that the experience for the people at Gabb a good one? Are you more on the recruiting side? Like where does that all fit in?
Yeah. So to this day, I still do a little bit of recruiting.
Okay.
We help out here and there. We're currently, we'll do shameful plug. We're currently recruiting our engineering team. So if you want to do some back end, come on over.
Yeah, we'll link. That's awesome.
And I help out with some of the interviews still. And, when our recruiting group is still working there, I say, hey, like let me plug in and do a couple and help find some people. But yeah, my job at this point is to help work with, not quite oversee, because the people who do it are more knowledgeable at their job than I am. So I mostly just help them to be successful in whatever way I can. But my goal for what my job at Gabb is to ensure that people are the right people in place, and that they have the guidance and or coaching necessary to help Gabb succeed. And then also ensure that we are capable of giving that to them. So having, like I kind of said, like that structure or process in place to give them and match them together so that they can be a successful employee at the company.
That sounds amazing. And I think recognizing that it's important to get the right people for these different roles, and then from a company standpoint, providing them the support, guidance, and structure they need to succeed is critically important. So Parker, tell us a little bit more about, like, from a people strategy perspective, how it has been supporting this hyper growth at Gabb over the last 5 years.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about this this jasmine. It's not quite a weed, but it grows like a weed. If you've ever seen jasmine growth on like walls or lattice work, it grows super fast. And it's beautiful too. It blooms and it's pretty. However, jasmine needs structure to grow. It needs a wall, it needs a windowsill, it needs that lattice work. If you just kind of leave it out in the middle of the ground, it will grow, but it will kind of grow in random places, and it won't grow as fast because it's looking for something to hold on to. It requires that. And a growing, we'll say, hypergrowth company kind of needs that same structure in order to grow fast and in the right direction. But if you were to put jasmine in a box, it would not grow past that. And so you need a good structure that it can go around and move through with the right, we'll say, proportions, and then can become the beautiful thing that it is without giving it too much to be kind of sealed. So that's the trick that we found at Gabb, is that we got an early set and said, hey, like, Gabb is not going to be a place where we're going to like policy and procedure everything at first. Like, we have to figure out how it's going to grow. There's also another comparison, which is, you've probably seen it before, it's called the sidewalk test, where if you want to put a sidewalk from going between some grass, you don't build the sidewalk first, you kind of build the grass first and let the people decide where the sidewalk's going to go. Because you can build a sidewalk, but that might not necessarily be the fastest direction for that to happen. And so at Gabb, we kind of took that direction and said, hey, let's bring in really smart people that know and care about the mission and know how to do their job super well, and let them kind of help us understand and dictate what those procedures need to be. And the first thing that we said to everyone is that, hey, your ego is out the door. Like, it doesn't matter like where you worked before. Like, we don't care what school you went to. Like, none of that matters. All that matters is like, hey, do you care about protecting kids with safe tech and safe software? And if that's the case, then we're all going to work better together. So being able to say, hey, there's some legal structures that we need. We have to have parental leave. Like, that is super important for us, like as a family care. That was one of the first policies we put in place, was a parental leave policy. We didn't even have anyone that was going to be using it. We didn't even know when that was going to happen, but we knew it would happen eventually. And then it started coming up on, hey, what are people improvements look like? How do we say, hey, year over year, how am I as an employee or as a team member going to improve my situation? Like, I want to eventually make some more money. Like, what does that look like? So we started to put some of those things in place. And then we started to say, hey, as you know, Parker and, there was Logan as well that was here early doing finance and accounting and logistics. When we start to parse out those jobs to other people, how do we ensure that we work well together? So it was communication procedures and policies, and making sure that those things just kind of happen naturally. And I won't say it was perfect, like nobody's perfect the first time, we had to go back and say, hey, this thing we didn't necessarily work the way we wanted it to. So let's like rehash it and get it back together. And then there were some others that we missed, just blatantly said that we wish we would have had other policies in place first. Off the top of my head, when we started looking at different ways that we could attract customers, we said, hey, like, let's just go out and do like all these different things for, maybe we try influencers. There's even a throw on like, maybe we should be an MLM. And that was like, no, like, don't do that. And all these different varieties. And we started sinking money into things without doing what we would now call like a good basis point to say, hey, where are we at and where we want to go? Instead of just going out there and spending money on them, we retracted that a little bit and say, we actually have to have a really good plan in place. And what we believe will happen based off of data gathering and research. And that kind of brought in the research team at that point, because nobody had enough time to do research. We just wanted to go and do, but we needed someone to help us understand if it was going to be feasible or if it was going to actually help that, help us protect more kids in the long run, which is really our ultimate goal. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that definitely does. And I love this idea. Like, if I were to think of Gabb as like, or, Gabb leadership as the parents, I think you guys are doing a great job of raising your kids, because you're giving them, kids need boundaries, and creativity loves constraints. And so what you're doing is you're providing this freedom for them to really use their specialties, their skills, their ideas, but within the constraints of the business that is going to help them grow, like you said, with the Jasmine, in the right direction. And so tell us a little bit more about how you find that perfect balance between those two, of the policies and then giving them that autonomy, which I think both are important. And it sounds like you guys have really nailed balancing that.
Yeah. So some of the ways that we've been able to find that is, like I said at first, is making sure we have the right people, which kind of starts at that recruiting phase. We work really heavily with our hiring managers to do an initial, hey, do we really need a person for this? Not to say we don't, but is this like someone's full-time job that they're going to be fulfilled? They're not going to be bored. They're going to have exactly what they need to be successful? Or are we just hoping that like throwing a body at a problem is going to fix the problem? Or the solution, is that going to be the solution? So we work really heavily at first to ensure what we're going after. And then we go and we spend quite a bit of time recruiting to ensure that we do have the right people in place. And that early on allowed us to say, hey, person from, early on that's worked at another career, now coming to Gabb, maybe not in a different career, but a different company. What have you seen that has worked to grow a company quickly without crumbling it with problems? I gave early examples to a couple of people when I worked at another place. This was before HR, where if I wanted to spend anything over $150, I had to do a request for proposal, which was maddening, because there was an entire organization, or I guess an organization, a committee of people that had to meet once every other week and say, hey, Parker wants to spend $150, $151 on this thing. Are there any other solutions that might come in more affordable? And they made the decision on what we could do. And it was maddening. It was terrible. And I'm sure many people listening have probably been in a situation like that, where the organization got so big that it needed those massive restraints on a company. And it just made it so we couldn't do our jobs fast. But the company was okay with that. And so finding a place where we can essentially say, hey, we have a job that we want to do, which is protect lots of kids. And how do we do that quickly? Because in all honesty, like, we were starting at zero. Nobody else was doing what we were doing. And we wanted to do that as fast as we could. And that was our biggest win. It was, like I said, finding those right people at the very forefront that kind of helped tell us. And then every once in a while, just being very open and communicative about what was and was not working. If you've ever read, I've got this book right here. It's kind of like a little Bible, if you will, Radical Candor. The intro to Radical Candor. You know this one? I don't know if you have it, but it's not even in like the meat of the book. It's in the very like beginning part. It's in the advanced section, the intro we'll call it, where she talks about how, due to lack of communication with someone who wasn't doing their job properly, it infected the entire organization. and people were mad. They were mad at her. They were mad at this person. And when she finally sat down and said, hey, like, this is what you're doing wrong. And he said, well, why didn't you tell me earlier? It was like, I don't know, like, I just felt weird or was afraid. And it's just being able to have open communication is actually more kind than withholding things from people. And so as we grew as a company, we said, hey, we're going to be open and honest about our communication, that if it leads to productivity, even though we might have to make some changes, we're all going to have to be okay with that, because there's no room for us to let things happen or fester within such a small place, or else it's going to drive us all out of control. And that is how, I guess, we would say we found that very good balance between procedure and autonomy, is letting the right people in the right room have good communication with one another, and making sure that we gave enough voice to everybody to have input on that and then make that decision.
I love that. And honestly, we're definitely fans of Radical Candor as well. For anybody listening, go look it up. It's a great book with a very practical framework for communication. So that's a great plug. Just kind of digging a little deeper on that, Parker. You're in this position, VP of people there. You affect the creation of a lot of policies and procedures. How do you determine if a policy should be created, or if people just need to work something out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I once worked at a place, and if any of my friends from that place are listening, they'll remember this, where somebody had a cheese in a fridge, and they brought it from home, and there was a entire argument about, hey, like, what can you and can you not bring into the office? And it was like, hey, we need to have this policy about what's okay to be putting inside of the fridge. And I talked to the person, and they, really what they wanted is they wanted to be heard. They wanted to be understood. And it's like, hey, I was wronged. Like, I feel like there should be a policy about this. And I said, hey, we don't need a policy about this. What we need to do is we need to talk to the person that keeps doing this thing. And what had happened is that a long time ago, that company used to keep that specific kind of cheese as like something the company bought. And so that person just thought that they were getting the last one every single time. And there was just complete lack of understanding from both directions, and the unwillingness for people to kind of talk to one another. And so people at Gabb know that when there are things like that might happen between a manager and a person, or a manager and a manager, or two people at the company, two team members, my very first response is, hey, when you talked to this person about this thing, what did they say? And if they have not talked yet, I say, I would love to be there if you want me to be there as part of like the HR person, but I feel confident that that person is reasonable, and that you are reasonable, and that you two can come together and find a reasonable accommodation together without needing HR to just get our hands in there and make the decision for you and create a policy because of it. And 9 times out of 10, I would say 99 times out of 100 even, it solved itself. Like, those people are like, hey, I'm sorry, like, thanks for letting me know, I didn't mean it, like, thanks for telling me your decision, here's where I was coming from, done. No policy needed. However, there's also some other times where it's I kind of gave this one early. We had a growing product team, and everyone was very, very excited on being able to help kids have safe tech. And we were trying to say, how do we this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to take customers away from iPhone. We didn't want kids to get iPhones early on because of all the data that was coming out. And we said, how do we compete with iPhone? What do we do to make sure that parents know about Gabb, and what other devices, what other things are? And our brains were going all over the place, and it was so fun. It was so creative. But there are only so many of us, and we only had so much money. And so we had to create a policy that said, hey, in order for us to actually go forward with one of these plans, you had to work with accounting to make sure, if you want to create a physical product, how does that made? How much does it cost? How much can we buy that fits into the actual path for us as part of a monetary side? You had to work with the research team to make sure customers actually wanted it. We've all seen a lot of companies who have said, hey, I'm going to make this thing, I think it's so cool, but nobody wants to buy it. That's not a place that Gabb could be. So you had to work with accounting and finance. You had to work with research to make sure there was a possibility or product market fit, as we say. And if you didn't have those, it wouldn't move forward. So that was a policy that we created at Gabb, and everyone was, initially like, oh, that'll kind of slow us down, and it would, but it would make sure that we're going in the right direction. We're not, as the Jasmine reference, kind of just going wherever we want. Like, we're growing together in the right place, and we have all the resources and buy-in from every department in order to make it happen. So I would say that's our biggest way of doing it is, hey, is this something that can be worked out amongst people? And is it individual case, or is it something that's more systemic and it's going to keep happening over and over, is really where that kind of policy versus, I would say, procedure and autonomy might come into play.
Right. And once again, great parenting from the Gabb leadership.
Really quick, we don't parent our team members. We don't do that. That is not what we do. We just help people to be their best selves and do their best work, but we are not parents.
just the analogy level.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying. And I think, going back to what you were saying about Gabb, just you needed to go in the right direction, and that's one of those things. The last thing you want is to head in the wrong direction and go really far in that wrong direction. And so slowing down for some things to make sure you are headed in the right direction makes total sense. And way back when, a lot of people didn't know what you guys were about, and you were trying to solve a problem that no one was solving at the time. And it is huge. There is tons of research around a smartphone being compared to a gun, right? It's like it's something that kids aren't prepared to handle yet. And so in closing, do you have any advice for parents on what to consider when looking at a first phone for their kids, and what your product solves for them?
Absolutely. I don't even need to, kind of recite any of Gabb's literature. There are so many other sources that have come out over the last couple of years since Gabb's founding that have really backed right into what we're about. One of the biggest ones is this book called it's called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. He's a professor, and he talks about using his research, how we've gone from a play-based childhood to a phone or screen-based childhood over the last really 2 generations, mine being kind of the first of that, when I was growing up in the 80s, and how there's so much more for a child's development than we've ever thought going wrong with us having instant gratification, having instant access, unlimited access to that favorite thing that you might want. For me personally, it's Bluey. Like, I can watch as much Bluey as I want to watch, and nothing's going to stop me. Like, it'll just keep going and going and going and going. And so when we're talking about why we're giving a device to our kids, as a parent, and I'll take this out of HR Park and go to Parent Parker, it really is kind of about what we're hoping them to gain. And if it's that they gain a little bit of independence, they do not need the entire world to influence their independence. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to social media. Because if them having social media means they're independent, then you go from you and your family and maybe your neighborhood and your social circles to being able to influence your child, to them having unlimited access to every single person on the planet can now influence their brain. And I even know, as a 40-year-old man, like, I am still influenced by things that I'm like, hey, like, I don't know if I want to be around this. But as a 6-year-old kid, like, there's nothing stopping that from happening. And that to us is not just like a scare tactic, it's a reality. And we want to make sure that we have the right tools in place to give our kids a chance, to give them an opportunity to continue to have fun, to not be locked in by social pressures and fear and cyberbullying and all the other things that can come from that, and giving them the tools that they do need, and maybe sometimes the ones they want they shouldn't get. And that's a conversation that is hard to have as a parent. Like, I get it, but that's our responsibility is to protect them. And we feel like that Gabb is a way that we are giving you a tool to give them what they need and not what they don't need.
That's so powerful. And honestly, I just have to say for everyone, disclaimer, we did not receive any compensation from Parker or Gabb. Honestly, we were very curious about what the culture is like at Gabb, the explosive growth there. And we're parents too. We know a lot of listeners out there are parents. And so we definitely were genuinely interested about any tips there. So really appreciate that. We're going to include a link to that book too, The Anxious Generation. I've never heard that. So we'll put that on the highlight for this episode as well. So really appreciate your thoughts there, Parker.
Yeah, and a quick congratulations to Parker. He did just get a Utah Business Award, so we'll include that link as well, so you can check that out. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah, a final thought I would say as a parent as well is just like one of the best things about kids is how easily influenced they are. And within your own home, like you can create those influences to be really positive for them. But as soon as you open that up to influences that may not be so positive, they latch onto that just as easily. And so protecting them while they're in that highly susceptible, influential phase until they're ready to make their own decisions, that's so wise. And so yeah, I totally advocate for this, and thank you so much for your advice and for everything you're doing at Gabb. I think you guys, your mission is very important, and we appreciate it as parents. So
well, I appreciate that too, y'all. And just to kind of go off that, like I said, they're not getting any money from this, but I am going to give them a code if they want to put on this. And if you go to Gabb, you can get a discounted device from that. So,
all right, yeah,
they didn't know that was happening.
Everybody.
Thank you. That will be awesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Parker.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you so much. And to our listeners, check out the link that we'll include in the code and leave us a review. We look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Thanks.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Culture Profit Podcast and for being a part of our journey to prove that putting people first is best for business.
Today's episode was sponsored by Mobrium.
Want to get more employee reviews and streamline your employer reputation? Visit mobrium.com.
Now go find one way to prioritize your people and watch your profits grow.